Welcome to Conversations Live. For more than a decade, we've brought you the best in books, entertainment, celebrity interviews, and current events. When the movers and shakers of the world have something to say to you, they say it to us first. Here's your host, Cyrus Webb.
And welcome back, everyone, to Conversations Live. I'm your host, Cyrus Webb. Glad you all could join us once again. But for our radio audience here in Mississippi at WYAD 94.1 FM and WYADonline.com, we're glad that you all could be with us. Also joining us are our friends at iHeartRadio and Amazon Music Podcast. We're glad you all could be with us as well. We're excited to welcome Mike Johnston to our program today, appropriate as we are wrapping up with his Children's Book Week. We're excited to welcome Mike here to talk about his literary journey and the new book, Confessions of a Dork Lord, Grave Danger. We'll talk to him not only about the creation of the character Wick, but also what it's been like for him to share him with the world and the different antics he finds himself in. If you guys have not grabbed up the new book, we'll let you know how to be able to get it. But, Mike, thank you so much for the time. Really appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for having me on the show. I'm excited to talk about the book.
Hey, well, Mike, the pleasure's definitely all mine. So let's start off by talking about Wick. What was it like for you in not only being able to create this character, Mike, but also to see the way that readers are kind of turning to it?
Yeah, so this is a middle grade book, sort of a story for, kids 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, but, I enjoy reading it too, so maybe it's for everybody. Wick is, he's a fantasy character. My book is sort of a fantasy journal about a young sort of up-and-coming Dark Lord. A Dark Lord is kind of a fantasy trope. It's somebody like a Sauron or a Voldemort from Harry Potter, sort of a big bad guy. And I was interested in creating a character that came out of the villain. I've always sort of liked villains, those sort of big bad guys who never quite get it right. They've always seemed like the ultimate sort of underdogs for me. And so that's who Wick is. He's the son of a Dark Lord trying to follow in his dad's grim footsteps. But he's got some challenges. He's allergic to fire and brimstone and not quite sure he can command an evil army. So it's a fun, humorous fantasy character, and I love writing about him, and I love hearing what kids think about him. I was luckily able to launch my first book prior to the pandemic, so I was able to tour schools and talk to kids about the character in the books, and that was really rewarding. So it's something I'm actually hoping to return to soon.
Nice. So that's interesting hearing you talk about Wick, because I think the thing that comes out in Confessions of a Dork Lord, Grave Danger, Mike, is that I think one of the lessons, as a reader myself who's definitely outside of your target audience, but I enjoyed the book as well, I think is that the importance of not, one, judging a book by its cover, but also the importance of being an individual, not necessarily feeling you have to live up to a certain expectation. What was that like for you to play with as you're kind of taking us through his adventures?
Yeah, Wick is a guy who doesn't fit in, and I think these are important heroes for our young readers. He's a guy who is always trying to fit in. In the stories, he ends up finding his own way to do that, and I think that's a metaphor for the way I think a lot of us learn to live in the world. We have to sometimes bend to pressure. But I think we can always find ways to resist it and to be ourselves in spite of maybe what the world wants us to be. I think that's really a tension, especially in kids' books, kids who are coming of age and in school and discovering who they are. In realizing that the real world is going to ask them to be certain things, and they're going to have to think about who they want to be. So I think, especially middle grade books, they're written for people who are discovering who they are. And, to be honest, I'm still discovering who I am sometimes. So it's a message that resonates with me a little bit, too. We're all sort of, continuing to figure ourselves out.
Right. And I think that goes to another point here, Mike, for you, because I want to talk about the creation then of Wick and his circumstances, because I think throughout the book, especially Confessions of a Dork Lord, Grave Danger, we're able to see that things are not always as they appear or that we would normally think of them. Where did the initial idea come from?
Well, I was interested in kind of turning the typical fantasy book on its head. Typically we have a in a lot of fantasy books, we have a hero, and we often have a bad guy, this sort of Dark Lord that they're fighting against. And I thought, it might be compelling to actually have that villain be the main character. It sort of turned the entire thing on its head. And that was really the genesis of this book. I was like, what if I can just maybe do the opposite of a normal fantasy book? What if this was the story of a young Draco Malfoy instead of a young Harry Potter? Because that's a steeper incline to go up. You've got a lot more challenges when you're on the wrong side of the issue. So to me, that was compelling. I was like, I haven't really read that book. I think the villain, and they're certainly out there. There's sort of like Despicable Me movies for kids, but I hadn't read that book recently of sort of dealing with being the son of a villain. And I thought that could be a fun premise for a middle grade novel.
And I think, too, the adventure definitely will keep readers engaged for sure. For yourself, as when it comes to storytelling, Mike, is this a dream come true for you, that you always kind of think that this is where your life would lead you?
Interesting, yeah. I was a huge reader as a child, especially in fantasy and science fiction is all that I read. And to be honest, as an adult, it's still all of what I read. It's the stuff I really enjoy. So this is definitely my wheelhouse, and these are books that I love reading, and so to write them is also a great joy, and even more than that, to share them with kids and to have kids enjoy them and to see them enthusiastic. I was at a book festival at Y'all West, and a young girl actually came up to me, and she had a copy of my book and had me sign it. And her mom was standing behind her, very tired looking, and she looked over top of the girl's head and said to me, she'd made me drive 2 hours to come here and get her book signed. And I said, and the mom seemed very tired, and I thought, oh my God, that's so wonderful, that a child would want so much just to get a book signed, and that the parent would take their entire day to drive to a book festival. So that kind of, those moments are incredibly inspiring, and they definitely make you want to keep working.
Did you know when Wick was first created, Mike, that the Confessions of a Dork Lord was more than one book, that it would be a journey of his life? Yeah,
it was definitely written as series, Wick has a lot of challenges. He's a sort of young, again, it's not dissimilar to Harry Potter, in which we have a kid trying to learn and master magic, except, Wick is terrible at it. At the start of the book, he's in magic school. We call it Middle Ages School instead of middle school. But he's never even cast one spell successfully. So he starts out at the bottom, and so he has a long way to go. So I thought, this would probably take a few books for him to work through all the machinations and put himself where he wants to be.
Yeah. Last thing I want to ask you about Mike, and then we're going to remind our audience how they can get the book, Confessions of a Dork Lord. The other thing I love about what the title kind of alludes to, but also what the story, especially Grave Danger, does too, is that it's okay to embrace, like myself, I've embraced my nerdiness. So it's kind of taken the power away from how people see you. The word dork is used sometimes in not the most flattering of ways. Is it also what you hope young readers take away from this, the importance of embracing who they are, even their flaws and all?
Yeah, I think, by putting that in the title, you're sort of owning the dork thing and maybe, taking the negative connotations out of it, and it's not necessarily that this book is just for dorks. I think it's for anybody who loves a good fantasy read. It's a fun sort of diary book that I think is really engaging and maybe even appeals to some kids who don't read as much as other kids. It's not even necessarily a book for just fantasy fans. It's a good, engaging read with a lot of humor in it. But yeah, I like putting the dork out there front. Maybe I was a little bit of a nerdy kid, and maybe we do own that eventually. We become proud of it. It's who we are. So, why shouldn't we be proud of it?
Right.
So yeah, I love putting that out, and I love putting on the book, and I love seeing kids pick up that book and become enthusiastic about it.
Well, I know they definitely will. Again, everyone, Mike Johnston has been our guest, the author of the Confessions of a Dork Lord series. The newest book is called Confessions of a Dork Lord, Grave Danger. You all can get it now, of course, through our friends at Amazon.com or through your favorite local bookstore. If they don't have it, I know they'd be more than happy to order it for you. And, Mike, how can our audience keep up with you?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter and Instagram, mostly Instagram. My handle is M Johnston Author, one word. Johnston is with a T, Johnston. So yeah, check me out on Instagram. I'm there, and because I write for children, I recently joined TikTok, and that's been a really traumatic experience for me. But I'm there. So.
Well, I haven't gotten there yet, Mike. I do like Twitter. I do love Instagram, but
don't rush. Yep.
Yeah.
Don't rush.
I mean, I figure I'll leave the dancing to the professionals, but I
exactly.
I'll just use the other one.
Exactly.
But definitely, you guys find Mike over there. And Mike, congratulations again. Thank you so much for stopping by. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Glad to do it. And we thank your audience for tuning in to another great segment of Conversations Live. Until next time, I'm your host, Cyrus Webb, saying as always, enjoy your day, enjoy your life, enjoy your world. Thank you all for choosing Conversations Live. Now let's go make today amazing. Take care.